A seismic shift is underway in global finance, one that is sending ripples through every corner of the world's economic landscape. The very foundations of American power and influence are being shaken, as the old order faces unprecedented challenges. For decades, the US dollar has been the undisputed king, dictating the terms of international trade, investment, and even the fate of entire economies. But now, the BRICS coalition, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a growing list of new members, is forging a bold new path, building what many are calling a parallel financial universe. Their ambitious goal is to trade directly in their own currencies, reducing their dependence on the dollar and strengthening their own financial systems. By bypassing US banks and the SWIFT system, they hope to insulate themselves from external pressures and assert greater control over their economic destinies. This marks the first credible, coordinated effort since World War II to challenge the dollar's monopoly as the world's reserve currency, a status that has shaped global finance for generations. The infrastructure for this new system is already being built and tested, with digital platforms and alternative payment networks rapidly taking shape. Countries are now settling major trade deals outside the dollar framework, using their own currencies for everything from energy to technology. The driving force behind this movement, a powerful desire for autonomy from US foreign policy, sanctions, and the political leverage that comes with dollar dominance. The BRICS initiative is the most organized and determined push yet to create a truly multipolar financial world where no single nation holds all the cards. The question is no longer if an alternative will emerge, but just how significant and how quickly this new system will grow, and what it will mean for the future of global finance. This unfolding story is not just a shift in economics, it is reshaping the very fabric of the 21st century, with consequences that will be felt for decades to come. The US dollar's dominance began at the historic Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, a pivotal moment in global economic history. During this conference, world leaders made a groundbreaking decision to peg their currencies to the US dollar, which was itself backed by gold, creating a new global financial order. Even after President Nixon ended the gold standard in the 1970s, the dollar's central role in the world economy persisted. This was further reinforced by the petrodollar system, which tied oil sales to the dollar and the sheer size and influence of the US economy. This unique position gave America what economists call an exorbitant privilege. The world needed dollars, so US banks became the essential gatekeepers of global commerce and finance. As a result, the US could finance its deficits at a lower cost and wield economic sanctions as a powerful tool of foreign policy, influencing global politics. Most international transactions had to pass through American banks, creating a deeply entrenched and seemingly unassailable financial infrastructure that spanned the globe. Although alternatives like the euro or yen emerged, they never truly rivaled the dollar's supremacy in the global market. However, now the BRICS coalition, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is methodically building new financial pipes to bypass this entrenched system. The very foundation of post-war American influence is being directly challenged as countries seek to diversify their financial dependencies. The world's financial plumbing is evolving, no longer exclusively American-made, as new networks and alliances form. The era of dollar dominance, once seemingly unshakable, is now under significant threat as the global financial landscape shifts. BRICS began as an investment term in 2001, but quickly evolved into a geopolitical coalition seeking to reform Western-dominated institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Their main grievance, their growing economic power, wasn't matched by influence in global governance. US sanctions, especially against Russia, accelerated their push for alternatives. BRICS responded by creating the New Development Bank and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, foundational pillars of their new financial system. In 2024, the group expanded, adding Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE, dramatically increasing its economic weight and control over resources. BRICS Plus now represents a huge share of global GDP, population, and oil production. This expansion makes de-dollarization more viable than ever. The coalition is now an expanding network, actively building a multipolar financial world. BRICS isn't trying to create a single new currency overnight. Instead, they're building systems, like BRICS Pay and independent messaging platforms, to let members trade in their own currencies, bypassing SWIFT and US banks. For example, a Brazilian company can now pay a Chinese supplier directly in reais, with clearing banks handling the conversion to yuan. Bilateral currency swap agreements ensure liquidity and reduce reliance on the dollar. China leads in signing these agreements, promoting the yuan in global trade. BRICS is also exploring a new unit of account, a basket of member currencies possibly backed by commodities to price contracts and value reserves. This would provide a stable benchmark for trade, independent of U.S. monetary policy. The ultimate goal, a self-contained financial ecosystem for the non-Western world. Each new system chips away at the dollar's dominance. The shift is incremental, but gaining momentum. Brazil and China are putting de-dollarization into practice, settling over $150 billion in annual trade directly in their own currencies. Designated clearing banks in each country handle payments in yuan and reais, cutting costs and reducing risks for businesses. This isn't just symbolic, it's economically advantageous and already working at scale. Russia and India are also settling more trade in rubles and rupees, especially for oil and defense. China is buying oil from Gulf nations in yuan, and Saudi Arabia is considering pricing oil in non-dollar currencies, a direct challenge to the petrodollar system. The BRICS Plus expansion, including major energy producers and consumers, creates a powerful, self-contained market outside the dollar. The new infrastructure, clearing banks, swap lines, messaging systems, makes the network resilient and attractive. Each successful transaction builds confidence, accelerating the shift away from the dollar. As BRICS nations increasingly bypass the US dollar in their international transactions, American banks are losing their long-held position as global financial gatekeepers. This shift means they face not only lower fee income from cross-border payments, but also a shrinking demand for dollar-based financial products and services. The ripple effects are being felt across the entire U.S. financial sector, as institutions scramble to adapt to a world where the dollar is no longer the default currency for global trade and investment. A decline in global demand for the dollar threatens the U.S. government's ability to finance its massive debt at low interest rates. As fewer countries and investors seek to hold dollars, the U.S. may be forced to offer higher yields to attract buyers, potentially raising interest rates across the board and increasing borrowing costs for everyone, from the government to ordinary citizens and businesses. The effectiveness of U.S. sanctions is also being undermined. Countries now have the option to pivot to BRICS, plus financial systems and alternative payment networks, making it harder for the U.S. to use its economic power as a tool of foreign policy. This erosion of leverage could have far-reaching consequences for America's influence on the global stage. As economic tools lose their potency, the U.S. may be forced to rely more heavily on diplomacy, or in some cases, military power to protect its interests. This shift raises both the risks and the costs of maintaining America's global leadership, potentially leading to more frequent and complex international challenges. Domestically, the consequences are just as significant. Higher interest rates and a weaker dollar could translate into more expensive imports, driving up prices for everyday goods. Businesses may face increased costs for raw materials and international transactions, which could ultimately be passed on to consumers, squeezing household budgets even further. While a sudden collapse of the dollar's dominance is unlikely, a gradual erosion is already underway. This slow shift means the U.S. economy will face a prolonged and potentially painful adjustment period as it adapts to a new reality where its currency no longer enjoys unrivaled global status. The exorbitant privilege that the dollar has provided for decades is fading, and with it, the unique advantages that have underpinned American prosperity. The global balance of power is shifting as emerging economies assert themselves and new alliances reshape the world's financial landscape. The U.S. must now navigate a more complex and competitive environment. For ordinary Americans, these changes may soon be felt in their daily lives, at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and when paying bills, as the cost of living rises and economic uncertainty grows. The comfortable economic reality of the past, where the dollar's dominance provided stability and low prices, is being challenged by new global dynamics and shifting power structures. To meet these challenges, the U.S. must adapt quickly and strategically, rethinking its financial policies and forging new partnerships to secure its place in a rapidly changing world. Experts are divided. Some say BRICS faces too many internal differences to truly rival the dollar, citing the need for deep liquid markets and trust in the rule of law. Yet, even U.S. officials like Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen admit that overusing sanctions could undermine the dollar's dominance. Senator Marco Rubio warns that if countries trade in other currencies, the US could lose its ability to sanction and face a serious economic crisis. BRICS leaders frame their move as a step toward a fairer multipolar world. Russian President Putin and Brazil's Lula da Silva openly question the dollar's centrality. Analysts like Zoltan Pozsar predict a new monetary order, backed by commodities and driven by the East. While opinions differ on timing, there's consensus. The tectonic plates of global finance are shifting. The post-Cold War assumptions no longer hold. The world is preparing for a new financial reality. For businesses, the shift to a multipolar currency system is real and immediate. US companies may soon need to transact in yuan, rupees, or other BRICS currencies, complicating operations and increasing risks, especially for small and medium-sized firms. Managing more currencies means new bank accounts, regulatory hurdles, and exposure to volatile exchange rates. Large multinationals can adapt, but smaller businesses may face higher costs and uncertainty. For BRICS plus companies, the new system offers faster payments, lower fees, and less risk of US interference. This could boost trade and investment within the global South, creating new supply chains and economic ecosystems. Over time, global commerce may split into two spheres, one dollar-based, one multi-currency. Companies will have to choose or learn to navigate both. The business world is being reshaped by this financial transformation. The world stands at a financial crossroads. The BRICS coalition is actively building an alternative to the dollar system, with new banks, swap agreements, and payment networks. De-dollarization is already happening, deal by deal. For the US, the loss of dollar dominance threatens its ability to finance deficits and project power. American banks face a future of increased competition and diminished influence. For emerging economies, the shift offers more sovereignty and fairer representation but also risks fragmentation and instability. The success of BRICS depends on overcoming internal differences and building trust. The pace of adoption will determine the future. Will more countries join, and how will the US respond? The unipolar era is over. A multipolar financial world has arrived. The outcome will define the global economy for decades to come.